welcome back to round 6, 7, I don't even know now. I'm keeping it rolling from the last video, so if you're seeing this, you might be watching it from the last video, might have got cut off, and now you're watching it from this, or you're just starting from this, so welcome to Brain Fried. We're going through um, the graph, GRT delegation, how to delegate to an indexer. This is purely educational, this is not financial advice, this is just uh, my own engineer's perspective on some of these uh, very unique projects or very technically impressive projects that I find. So in the last video, we stopped where we were looking at pt.2. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. As an indexer, we found him on the graph scan. And I didn't step through all of this information, so maybe I could do some of this as well. So the effective reward cut is going to be what the indexer receives from the rewards that are gained from querying. And then the effective query fee cut is what the indexer receives from the query fee that they receive. Self-stake is what the indexer is staked. Delegation pool is what has been delegated to the indexer, and ideally the delegation pool plus the self-stake should be what's allocated. Sometimes it's not, sometimes they haven't allocated everything that's been delegated. For this graph node one, I'm just looking at 1.2 plus 11.8, that should be roughly 13. Am I right? 12? Yeah, 13, but then plus some other stuff, so probably 13.1. They have 7.3 million GRT room for more delegation before they're over delegated. The historic APY has been 9.5%. The current estimated APR is 8.7%. So I'll kind of circle back to that in a second, something that relates to that. And we see similar information if we're on the Graph Explorer as well. They kind of present the same information just in I think in a nicer way on the graph scan. So the total 1.3, 1.2 million GRT staked, that's how much they own. They have been delegated 6.75 thousand GRT. And the other thing is that they mentioned, I think on the Academy website, the Graph.Academy, they can only be delegated so much relative to how much they have staked on their own. So if I believe it was a ratio of like 16, like 1 to 16 or something like that. So if a delegation or if an indexer has staked 100,000, which is the minimum, then the maximum allocation they can productively receive is 1.6 million. I think it's 16. It seems like some of these numbers aren't quite that. I think I remember reading something where it said 16. So allocated, they have allocated 1.7 million GRT, which looks almost all of it. It looks like they haven't allocated 4.98 thousand GRT for whatever reason. It means that once they allocate it, they could be earning more rewards than they currently are. Then you can see their all-time indexer rewards. This person has received 233 indexing rewards, 203,000, sorry. This is split between the indexer and the delegator. So the delegators have earned 23,000 GRT for the indexers 209,000 for a total of 233,000. And then you can see the current delegators that are delegating to this indexer. You can see how much they have delegated. So this person has delegated the most with basically 4.5 thousand GRT. And then you could kind of see how much they've unrealized rewards and how much they've earned total. And then when they last delegated that, and then when they last undelegated that. So this person is zeroed out and realized the reward of 1.9 GRT, and looks like they they delegated for about 2.5 months. But I don't know what their original delegation was. It looks like it might have been very small or something. So currently 0, 0 to 0 for this bottom person, but their realized rewards have been 21.5 thousand, and they undelegated in November, towards the end of November. Yeah, you can kind of try to get an idea. You can see any disputes that the indexer has been in. You can see past allocations. So this indexer, I guess, prefers to index live peer or pool together and then live peer, and then you can see how long their active indexing state was. And I believe they'll stay active for indefinitely if they don't close it, only up to a certain point. Like, so I think if they're open forever, like if they forget to close it or something, then the graph will actually close it for them after like maybe 35 days or 40 days. I'm not sure. That's just my understanding. I could be wrong about that. Let's see what else. So the one indexer that I chose was actually indexing something called Graph. Let's see if I can find it. Was it this one? Oh, Kala Chain Bridge was one of the indexers I was looking at, and I was like, what is this? I've never heard of this. So I started looking into it a little bit. I found this. This is basically all I could find. I found a Git repository that basically links to, I don't know, I don't have the Git open anymore, but I found like a Git that said this is the Kala blockchain, and then I found this article that said Subquery helps Kala build their new ERC chain bridge. And so this is one of the projects I started looking into. I'm still learning a little bit more about it. It seems like they're doing something with kind of making the public information on the blockchain more secure. Not secure, but I guess maybe encrypted. I'm still fuzzy on it, so that's one I'm looking into just for my own curiosity's sake. The last thing I want to mention about Graph, there's been a few updates, and I've been kind of going through them, trying to pick out what information I think is worth repeating, kind of highlighting, I guess. And one of the things that they talked about is this idea of syncing from Genesis. When a new node is brought online, it has to sync, either sync from Genesis or maybe sync from some other node that has already synced from Genesis or something like that. And I think that part is still in development, and they're still deciding how that functionality should work, or if a secondary market should be formed around information that's already synced from Genesis. And then they mentioned EIP, so this is referring to the Ethereum blockchain. EIP 44s is what they call it, 4444. They call it 44s, which was created on the beginning of November. And what they talk about is basically kind of comes down to syncing from Genesis versus not syncing from Genesis. And they say that the historical blocks currently occupy 400 gigs and growing, and therefore to validate the entire chain, users must typically have 1 terabyte of disk space, and that's growing as well. So the whole thing about Ethereum is keeping its functionality or its hardware demand low enough to where consumer products can run this chain or validate this chain. The historical data is not necessary for validating new blocks, so once the client has synced to the tip of the chain, historical data is only retrieved when requested explicitly over JSON RPC, so remote procedure call from some type of distributed app or something that is maybe presenting accounts or information that has happened in the past on the Ethereum blockchain. And they mention, so the only reason, just to wrap this up, the only reason why I'm bringing this part up is because not to talk about Ethereum at all, but to talk about preserving backwards compatibility. So they want to be able to index this historical data somehow so that these applications that depend on it can still function properly. And so one thing that they do mention is historical data can be packaged and shared via torrent magnet links or over the networks like IPFS. We're already familiar with IPFS. Furthermore, systems like Portal Network or the Graph can be used to acquire the historical data. So I've never heard of Portal Network, and that might be something worth looking into, but they do mention the Graph explicitly, so that's something to keep in mind, that like I've been saying, the Graph's functionality is so technically necessary as kind of like a building block for all these different projects that, well, now you kind of see it because this big chain like Ethereum might even be dependent on the Graph as well. And they've already talked about, in the developer updates, they talked about setting up a subgraph that indexes this historical data properly. So that's interesting. This is not something that you're going to see advertised at this point because this is just a proposal, and I think the stage of this proposal it's in the draft stage. So there's a few stages of EIPs, and you can see it at eips.ethereum.org. And you can see ones that are in the draft stage and the review stage and the last call stage, and then I believe into the final stage. So right now it's in the draft phase, so it could be a little while before it actually exists or is implemented, but it's interesting to see that the Graph is explicitly named in one of Ethereum's EIPs. So that tells you that this project is, it is what you think it is. It's definitely a useful idea, a useful product that the Graph is putting out. Okay, this was just more follow network stuff that I was looking into. Basically, I don't think I I rounded this off, but that Kala blockchain that I mentioned, it basically boils down to this Fala network. From what I was able to kind of trace through, it basically boils down to this Fala network. And this Fala network, the white paper was published in 2019. I haven't finished reading it, but I started reading it and trying to learn more about it. So that could be something we talk about next time, is the Fala network. If I'm forgetting stuff or if I'm like missing information, you gotta like, if you're interested in seeing more of something, you gotta just post it in the comments, because once I see something that's interesting, I kind of go off into that direction, and then I'll come back and go off into another direction. And some maybe I'll skip over something that you wanted to see more of. And I'm all for going more in depth into stuff. I just gotta know like what part is the most interesting aspect of it. All right, so yeah, that's it for today. This is kind of a quick one. I'm just trying to keep everything up to date so I don't fall behind again, because I know that was kind of rough. It was, well, at least it was rough for me trying to decide what needed to be presented. So I'm trying to keep these smaller, lighter updates, more frequent, lighter updates coming, so that not just like throwing a bunch of information. So yeah, that's it. I'm officially a delegator now. And if you have questions about delegating, or if you want to know more about what I chose to delegate, or I don't know, if there's anything that you could think of, I'll be more than happy to answer some of that. Okay, so once I'm done going through some of this follow network, over my Christmas break, I guess, and there's a few other things I want to look into, then I'll come back and I'll share with you what I've learned, and keep you up to date. Oh, one thing I do want to point out, I don't know if you guys are following this at all, but so Near, I believe we started looking into Near. It's just kind of cool to see, but it's not this, again, this isn't financial advice, so don't think of it like that. But so when did we start looking into Near? I think we started looking into Near maybe a week ago-ish. See, December 20th maybe. So it was at $8, and then now today it's at $15, $16. So Near could be something. If it's just the sharding though, that's the thing. Like if it's just the sharding aspect that people are excited about, that's going to come in Ethereum too, and that's going to come after these 64 chains are deployed. So I don't know. Whatever. It's just something to think about. Okay, that's all I have for today. Next time should be another good update, because I'm staying on top of it. So see y'all next time.